So, who do you know tonight, lazy young gentleman? The echo is where in the back of the woods. Call him forth. Sean Mac Iowick, brief dragger, for the concern of Messrs. Yon Jameson and Song, rated 100 and thin per store 100 on his nightly quiz quick quack of the 12 apostrophes set by Jockett McEarweek. He misunderstruck him and aimed for hollow number 3 of them, and left his 3 natural riposts, in 4 of them in their own fine artful disorder. Aye, what second to none, my the rector and maximost bridge-maker, was the first to rise taller through his bean stale than the blue gum bureau burrow barbone, or the gigantus Wellingtonia sequoia, went nudibusts and trouters into a Lafayette when she was barely in her tricklies, was well known to claw the conciliation cap onto the esker of his hooth, sports a chain gangers Albert Solomonly over his Hollander's epulence, thought he weighed a new ton, when there felled his first lapable, gave the heinousness of choice to every night betwixt Yester Dicks and 2 Marys. Had several successive collared seer bandmaids on the same big white drawing-room hearthrug. Is a Wilberforce to this hour at house, as he was in Heather pumped the Catholic war-try and shocked the Protestant boyne, killed his own hungry self in anger, as a young man, found fodder for 5 when all Mark and Rose go flooded with Hirish tutors, Cornish made easy, voucher of rotables, toll of the road, bred many-headed stepsons, for one leap your own torter, is too funny for a fish, and has too much outside for an insect, like a heptagon crystal, and prisms true and false, for us is infinite swell in unfitting indurance. Once was he shovelled, and once was he arsoned, and once was he inundered, and she hung him out. Bill Bailey has a quadrant in his tile to tell toll a cadaclog. It is offers chances to long on, but stands up to legger before, found coal at the end of his harrow, and moss roses behind the seams, made a fort out of his postern, and wrote F.E.R.T. on his buckler, his escape master-in-chief from all sorts of hooding places. If he out-Howards against Barkers, to the shule bred he acts whitely, was evacuated at the mere appearance of 3 germ huns, and twice besieged by a sweep, from zoomorphology to omnian animalism. He is brushed by the spin of a coin, towers an Eddystone amid the lampless, casting swan beams on the deep, threatens thunder upon malefactors, and sends whispers up frou-frous, when Duke Hookback Crook upsets his ass. Boosworthies jeer and junket, and they booze him oohs and bars his ahs, when he looks like Hunket Plunket by sows and sewers, and search a party on a lady of the city, business reading newspapers, smoking cigar, arranging tumblers on table, eating meals, pleasure, etc., etc., pleasure, eating meals, arranging tumblers on table, smoking cigar, reading newspaper, business, minerals, wash and brush up, local views, juju toffee, comic and birthday cards. Those were the days, and he was their hero. Pink sunset shower, red cake, clay cloud, sorrow of Sahara, oxide on Erin, arraigned and attainted, listed and lated, pleaded and proved, catches his cheque at bank of inganged and endorses his doom at chapel exit, brain of the Franks, hand of the Christian, tongue of the North, commands to dinner and calls the bluff, has a block at Morgan's and a hatach all the afternoonch, plays Gehammerite when he's Ernst but Mrs. Morsey of the Christian, tongue of the North, commands to dinner and calls the bluff, has a block at Morgan's and a hatach all the afternoonch, plays Gehemerai when he's Ernst, but Mrs. Morsey when he's lustig, walked as far as the head where he sat in state as the rump, shows early English trace marks, and a marigold window with manic gilt lights, a myrioscope, 2 remarkable piscines, and 3 well worth seeing ambries, arches all portcullised, and his nave dates some dots, is a horologe unstoppable, and the ben of all bells, fruit ist and herit. And though he's mildew-stained, he's mouldy-stoned, is a Quercus in the forest, but plain member for Megalopolis, mountain mighty, fawn on Fleetfoot, Plankinow platform, Blankinow Scourturn, idle in Cower gates, he is enumerated, hold as an earl, he counts, ship-shaped phrase of bug-looking words with a form, like the easing moments of a Graminivores, to our dooms brought he law, our manoirs he made his will of, was an overgrind to the underground, an aqueduced for fiery throats, sends boys in socks a coffer whooping when he lets falls his carbon oxide, and silk stockings show her shapings, when he looses hose on her stocks dry powder for the ill people, and pincun pellets for the pale, give his Monday foot to Miserius, his pinch to Anna Livia, that superfine pigtail to Cerizia Serosia, and quid rides to Titius, Caius, and Sempronius, made the man who had no notion of shopkeepers feel he'd rather play the duke than play the gentleman, shot 2 queens and shook 3 cascals, when he won his game of dwarfs, fumes inwards like a strombolist till he smokes at both ends, man mote, befire of him womankind betad, shows 1 white drift of snow among the gorse growth of his crown, and a chaperone of repentance on that which shed gore, pours and quies, triple bill, went by metro for the polis, and then hovel by to the finders. Hail, woa, you that seek, whom filth hath plenished, death devoured, hawk is leading. Coco comes next, Emery tries for the flag, can dance the O'Bruns a polar pass at Newlyn, to his own orchestrous accompaniment, took place before the International Convention of Catholic Midwives, and found stead before the Congress for the study of endo-national calamities, makes a delictious entree and finishes off the course between sweets and savouries, flouts for forecasts, flares for fines, and the fun of the fray on the fairground, cleared out 365 idols to set up 1 calassal for hen wives, hoping to have males, the floor hula, the grasping one, the kinder of Paschal fire, forbids us our trespasses as we forget him. The phoenix be his pyre, the sinners his sire, piles big Peliam or little oasis like the pilus of Hercules, as the eat you as corplex, and the drink the dregs kink, worst meats for chumps, and cow carlos for scullions, when he plies for our favour, his very trolley hours, 2 psychic espousals, and 3 desertions, made the matter of fact now, but was foot of mag then, Catabole Hill, ex-mountain of flesh was reared up by stress and sank under strain. Tank it up, tells the tailor to his tout, and toot cast for a man, but bit a thimble for a maid, blimp, blump, a dud letter, a singer's song, a syllable, a byword, a sentence with cerces, while stands his canusium, frail shall fall, was hatched at Selbridge, but thimble for a maid, blimp, blimp. But it joculated a brood as it gain in the beginnings, so wound up in the battle of Boss. Roderick, 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 oh, you've gone the way of the Danes, variously catalogued, regularly regrouped, a bush boy's holiday, a quacker's mating, a wench's sandbath, the same homo heterus checking in Lozek as when solii early bluey, real detonation but false report, spar mad but insane, half familian via bogus census, but a no street houseman when all fanned, is the handiest of all handies and the most elegant spot to dump your hump, hands his secession to the new Patricius, but plumps phlegmatically for the bloody old centuries, eats with doors opens and ruts with gates closed, but dub him Rothschild, and more limbed him, rocky fellow, shows his fly to both hemispheres, but thrives to cover up his traces. 7 dovecotes who claim to have been Pitchenheim to his Homer, Smyrnian, Roebuck, Colin's rear sea point, qui Houth. Ashtown, Rotherley, independent of the lordship of Chamberlain, acknowledging the rule of Rome, we saw thy farm at useful prine, Domehill, Domnall, reeks like a Ilbel pies, and looks like Iceland's ear, lodged at quat places, lived through tote rains, takes a sunbath for his weekend and a warzone up for his refreshment, after a good bout at stool ball, enjoys Duraflow, Duraflay, what nevermore missed and Colombo found, believes in every man his own goalkeeper, and in Africa for the full-blacks. The arc of his drive was 40 full, and his stumps were pulled at 80. Boasts him to the thick enthuse, the oldest creator in Ariani, and looks down on the Swiss family. Colossons, whom he calls Les Nouvelles Roches. Though his heart, soul, and spirit turn to Pharaoh times, his love, faith, and hope stick to futurism, light leg-lifters, sense him Surians from afore, while Boer bow-brenders curse him gromelans to his hindmost. Between you lasses and ye last glimpses of even, the lug his peak has, the luck his pile, drinks thar and wood ha for his Azamar, and eats the unperishable sow, to stive off regular rack the beggar's cloak, then reclined about his paddy stool, the whores wink at him as they walk their side on Christianmas, to Adred Lodge, New Zealand, after a lengthy illness, the Reverend Mr. Easterling of Pentecostus, no followers by bequest, fanfare all private, gone where glory waits him, Baal bulletist, but not here, yet. Maxwell Clark, co-minxed on the articles, but finished as Borgias. From the vat on the beer, through the burr in the dark, to the bottle of the born, is and the highest, but low is his root, filled fanned of hackleberries. When all was tuck and toss, up for him as a youngster to fall foul of hock and beshers, wherein he had gauged the use of raisin, adds aliments, does doles, wraps rustics, tams turmoil, sas seed, enough for a semination, but sows skivvies on the sly, learned to speak from hand to mouth, till he could talk Irish, with his eyes shut, hacked his way through hocks, but hanged his help. From there, hereafters, Rialtos, Annesleys, Bind and Balls, to say nothing a toke of new combing, the gleam of the glow of the shine of the sun through the dearth of the dearth, on the blush of the brick of the viled villa of Barnahume, as dust turned to brown, these died to tarted him, rue wrote, dull spracken teasel full as ash sundew, and cress, long gone but not forgotten, stood his sharp assault of famine but grew girthier. Girther and girther, he has 24 or so cousins germinating in the United States of America, and a namesake with an initial difference in the once Kingdom of Poland. His first a young rose, and his second's French Egyptian, and his whole means a slump. At Christie's fourth of his pierced part came the woman of his dreams, blood thicker than water, lost trade overseas, by shop of Glintylook, Earl of Hood. You and I are in him surrendered of Bruin Bloodens, Ellen's flea. Polt, perhaps, but Wang Chang every time. He was one of your high big pipey boys, but fancy him as smoking fags at his time of life. Mount of Mish, Mel of Moy, had 2 cardinal ventures and 3 capital sinks, has a peep in his pocketbook and a packet-book in his keep, BVH, BLG, PPM, TDS, VBD, TCHLON, his breakfates, Lungadina, and super. As the streets were paved with cold, he felt his stopper ere he taught himself skating and learned how to fall, distinctly dirty but rather a dear. Ho with chieftains everywhere. With Morda, Osman Effendi, Serge Padishaw, bases too many, outprimes all his parasites, first of the Fenians, Rowde Fenians. His tiara of scones was held unfillable till one lion felled him at Westminster, was struck out of his sittim when he rode sorely to Damascus, and to our appalling predicament brought us plagues from Budapest, put a match head on an aspen stalk, and set the living afire, speared the rod and spoiled the lightning, married with cakes and repunked with pleasure, till he was buried. How happy was he, and he made the welkins ring with up Micawber, gob at the top of the staircase, carry on the mat of straw, a false hood with a spindler web, chokes the cave mouth of his unsightliness, but the nestlings that live in its leaf screen sing him a lover of arbitues. We strike hands over his bloodied war-sheet, but we are pledged entirely to his green mantle, our friend Vike Legal, our sovereign Foy under the 4 stones by his streams, who vanished the wassail bowl at the joy of shells. Mora and Laura had a hill of a high time, looking down on the confusion till firm took in readiness. Forward spear and the wind foot of Courage strewed the lake mist of Lego over the last of the fields. We darkened for you, falterer, in the year of morning, but we'll fiddle to the dim winklers when the steamy morven light calls up the sunbeam. His striped pantaloons, his rather strange walk, hereditatis columna erecta, Hagion chiton eraphon, nods a nap for the nonce, but crows cheerio when they get ecumenical, is a simultaneous equator of illuminated integras, when 3 upon 1 is by inspection improper, has the most conical hodpiece of a Confucianist Hieronym, and that choo-choo fuous chin-chin of his is like a footsie congaloo around Tay's Hantiland. He's a globe full as a gasometer of lithium and luidity, and he was thrice 10 annular years before he wallowed around Ragian Circus. The cobblestones of the cupping of his cavern is a canine constant, but only an American could approximate the preciosity of his Atlas Longment. Return. Burning body to eager air on melting mountain, in wooing wave, we go into him sleeping children, we come out of him strugglers for life. He divested to save from Mrs. Drownings their rival queens, while Grimshaw, Bragshaw, and Renshaw made off with the stolen clothes, taxed and rated, licensed and ranted, his 3-faced stone hen, was found on a white horse hill, and the print of his costless feet was seen in the goat's grass circle. Pull the blind, toll the deaf, and call lum, lame and halty, miraculone, monstrucline, led the uplaws at the creation, and hissed the snake charmer off her stays. Hounded became haunter, hunter became fox, harrier, merrier, tarrier, tav. Olaf the oxman, Thorker the tourable. You feel he is Vespasian, yet you think of him as Aurelius. Rugamore, traditori, Socianus commonizer, made the summer assault on our shores and be giddy, got his sands full. First he shad down Raglan Road, and then he tore up Marlborough Place, Cromlech Height, and Cromwell Hill, where his farm-famed feet rests, when O'Lurch's lout let free into the lubarb he loved. Mara shaled his ward boats, and delimited the main, netted before nibbling, can scarce turn a scale, but grossed after meals, weighs a town in himself. Banbar prayed for his conversion. Berla missed that grand old voice of Colossus among cabbages, the melarang citron of fruits, larger than life, doughtier than death, Grand Turco, a Raj Ferment, La Shambulja, Lepoline, the sparkle of his genial fancy, the depth of his calm sagacity, the clearness of his spotless honour, the flow of his boundless benevolence, our family fur bear, our tribal turnpike. Quarry was he invincible, and Kerr was he Birked, partitioned Irksa home, united Irishmen. He took a swig at his own measure, but she was tested a big gawky, and as the salmon he was coming up in him all life long. Come, Isla Dick, Heckleberry and saw the warden, silent as in the being honey, stark as the breath on Hauk, Costello, Ginzello, Mahoney, Mohan, though you rope Amrik, you home ruler is Dan figure right, he is hoisted by the scurf of his shaggy neck. Figure left, he was rationed in isobaric patties among the crew. One asks, was he poisoned? One thinks, how much did he leave? Ex-gardener, Reisenberger, fitted up with the planturous existences. Would make Rosio greedy, mites, little hose, taut sheets and scuppers awash, but the oil silk back, libus stirpit, mix his aquascutum. The enjoyment he took in gay women, the employment he gave to gay men, sponsor to a quad of pierces, ally to a host of Warleys, against lightning, exploding fire, earthquake, flood, whirlwind, burglary, third party, wrote, loss of cash, loss of credit, impact of vehicles, can rant as grave as oxtail soup, and chat as grey as a porto flippant, is unhesitant in his unionism, and yet a bigoted nationalist. Sylvia Cola is shy of him. Matros and Hosens knows the joke, shows the sinews of peace in his Chester wars. Fee 5 of home. 939 years of copyhold. Is all days open for Pelham polity's sake, when he's not sometimes closed for the love of Janus, sucks life's elixir from the petty pickles of the Jewess, and rolls and sulks. If any popery runs down the Huguenots, boom 'em out, Wallersley, Ubermashal, Blowchair and Supercharger, Monsieur Ducro, Mr. Mulson, Master Gardener, to one he's just pawned to Judex, to another full of beans and brayons, hallucination, couchman, ectoplasm, passed for Barbar, black sheep. Till he grew white, woo-woo-woolly, was dramatised by Mac Milligan's daughter and put to music by Ron Shobard, All Fitzpatricks in his emirate remember him. The boys of Retford hail him Babu, indanified himself with borough tribute, and was shanked publicly to Brigstall, and was given the light in Dray Ortshafts, and entumult in three plexes. His likenesses is in the terracute, and he giveth rest to the rainbowed. Liberality, froche eternity, and quality. His reverse makes a virtue of necessity, while his obverse mars a mother by invention. Beskilk his Gunwale, and he's the second imperial Yuntide points unhooked enters, and he's lath and plaster. Calls upon all thing when he fails to appeal at each covos, Basidens, Adre, Congsema, Rex Regularum, stood into D-mouth, then back broadside on Borley Clare, either Eldorado or Ultima Thule. A coil of food fires, a crawl of 5 pubs, laid out lashings of laveries to hunt down his family ancestors, and then pled double trouble or quick quits to hush the buckers up, threw peblets for luck over one sodden shoulder, and dragooned pureplads, armed to their teeth, pepped as Gaudio Gambrinus, grim as Potter the Grave, A's of Arts, Deuce of Damimonds, Trouble of Clubs, Fears of Spates, Cumbrum, twice nicey nursey, forward drum, but tray to Unno tips the scale, reeled the title roll, opposite a brace of girdles in silver on the screen, but was sequenced from the set as Crookbank by the even more titulars, Wake and Dave and Barry. He can get on as early as the 22nd of Mars, but occasionally he doesn't come afore Virgin Tinquinic Germinal. His Indian name is Hapapusi Subgibre, and his number in Arithmosopho is the Stars of the Plough. Took weapon in the province of the Pike, and let fling his lin on Eelwick. Moves in vicious circles, yet remues the same. The drain rats bless his offals, while the park birds curse his floodlights. Portobello, Equidoctor, Theracotta, Pericorello, he pours into the soft-clad Shelbourne the hard cash earned in Watling Street. His birth proved accidental, shows his death its grave mistake. Brought us giant ivy from the land of Younkers, and bewithered Apostolopolis with the gale of his gall. While satisfied that soft, youthful, bright, matchless girls should bosom into fine, silk-clad, joyous, blooming young women, is not so pleased that heavy, swearsome, strong-smelling, irregular-shaped men should blot out active, handsome, well-formed, frank-eyed boys, herald hairy fair, all after wheat, husband your aunt and endow your napos, hearken but hush it, screen him and see. Time is an archbishopric, time was a tradesman's entrance, Beckburn brooked with waths, scales scarred by scow. His rainfall is a couple of knee-highs, while the mean grass temperature, marked 3 in the shade, is the melting point of snow, and the bubbling place of alcohol, has a tussle with the trolls, and then does himself justice, hinted at in the eschatological chapters of Humphrey's Justesse of the JPs, and hunted for by Theban recensors, who sniff there's something behind the bug of the deaf. The king was in his corner wall, milking Mark Sir Murray. The queen was steep in ombre, feeling fain and furry. The maids was midst the hawthorns, shoeing up their hose. Out pimps the blackguards, pump, and pumpkin they goes. To all his foretellers he reared a stone, and for all his comforters he planted a tree. 40 acres, 60 miles, white stripes. Red strips, red stripe. Washes his feet in Anolk water. Who missed the porter, so what shall he do? For he wanted to sit for Pimploko, and they've caught him to stand for Sue. Dutch Lord, Dutch Lord. Over Rosus, Head Mound, King and Martyr, Dunstung in the east, Piter, Lepore in Petrin, Bath the Crete by the Exchange. He hastens towards Dames Troth and Reading Hand, like the Prince of Orange and Nassau, while his Trinity left behind him, like Bold Beggar Hill, Bold Beggar Bill the Bustonley, Broad of a Hazelwood, Pool in the Dark, changes Blowwicks into bullocks, and a well of Artesia into a bird of Arabia. The handwriting on his face wall, the crypto-concoid Siphonos Stomata in his expressions. His birth spot lies beyond the Hellespont, and his burial plot in the pleasant little field is the illest kiosk on the Plenistia, and the unguous hostel in Saint Scholarland. Walked many hundreds and many score miles of streets and lit thousands in one night lights, in hectares of windows. His great wide cloak lies on 15 acres, and his little white horse decks by dozens of outdoors. Oh, so the sail, and woe the rudder that was set for Marie Kai. His sons the Huns, his daughters the Tartars, are plenty here today, who repulsed from his burst the bomb bolts of Ostenton, and falchioned each flash down a duck in the deep. A personal problem, a locative enigma, upright one, vehicle of arcanization, in the field, lying chap, flood supplier of circulation through Eblanes, a part of the whole as a port for a whale. Dear Hewitt Castello, equerry, were daylighted with her outing, and are looking backwards to an early summers from rhododendrons, is above the seed fruit level and outside the leguminate ferrous zone. When older links lock older hearts, then he'll resemble she, can be built with glue and clippings, scrawled and voided on a buttress. The Night Express sings his story, the song of sparrow notes on his stave of wires. He crawls with lice, he swarms with sagots, is as quiet as a mersk, but can be as noisy as a sonacog. Was Dilmun when his date was palmy, and Mudlin when his nut was cracked. Suck up the seas, lep loud at ease, one lip on his lap, and one cushion in his crease. His porter has a mighty grasp, and his back is the boon of broad white, as far as wind dries, and rain eats, and sun turns, and water bounds. He is exalted and depressed, assembled and asundered. Go away, we are deluded. Come back, we are disghosted. Board the Ostroff, leapt the Inferus, swam the marble, and flew the moil like fat tallow of greasefulness, yea, the dripping greasefulness. Did not say to the old, did not say to the scorbutic, he has founded a house, Uru, a house he has founded, to which he has assigned his fate. Bears a raven Geliant on the field Durv, was the halo of his varlet when he appeared to his she-cook as Haycock Emmet, Bawaru, Tararu, Osteric. Mangy and Skunk pressed the beer of ailed age out of the nettles of rashness, put a roof on the lodge for him, and a cock in his pot pro homo, was dappifer than Panzer Censor, than Hortifex Magnus. The topes that tippled on him, the types that toppled off him, still starts our hares, yet gates our goat, pocketbook, Gapman Gundrun. The light of other days, dire dreary darkness, our awful dad, Timur of Tortua, puzzling, startling, shocking, nay, perturbing, went puffing from king's brew to new customs, doffing the givens off him to every breach of all size, with pa's new heft and papa's new helve. His papa's old cutlass, papa left us, when young-headed, old-shouldered, and midless neck, aged about, caller herring every day, turgid tarpon overnight, sea lorion the comalian that changed endocrine history by loaving his loaf with 40 bannocks. She drove him dafe till he driv her blind up. The pigeons, doves be perching all over him one day on Basil Bridge, and the ravens there be pitching their dark nets after him the night behind Königstein's arbour, Triumph of the Rep, Crumph of the Priv, Prosper of the Pub, his head's wood, its ideal if his feet are bally clay. He crashed in the hollow of the park. Trees down as he soared in the vacuum of the phoenix. Stones up. Looks like a mountain bolter. Sounds like a rude word. The mountain view, some lumen pale round a lamp of sugar in buoyant water. 3 shots of puddy at up saddle, made up to Miss McCormick nigh. Lacarthy, who made off with Darley Dermond, swank and swarthy, once diamond cut garnet now. Damn it, Cuts Groany, you might find him at the Florence, but watch out for him in Wynn's Hotel. Fears his bow and wears his liquor, and here lays his besquiet hearse, deep. Swede Albione, likeliest villain of the place. Henry Cantorell, Cochrane Egotistas. Limitated. We take our tails and freeze our fleas round Saturn's mounted flood. Foot. Built the London's kirk and destroyed the church's land. Who guesses his title grabs his deeds. Fletch and pretties, fashion chaps, artful Duke of Wilsley, Huggleberry's funeral, Cook, Calucac, heard in camera and excruciated, boon when with benches billeted, ban if buckshot back shattered, heaven gendered, chaos fleeted, earth born. His father presumptively ploughed it deep on over time, and his mother, as all evince, must have travailed her fair share, her footprints on the magazine, hetman unhorsed by shearings and honorary captain of the extemporized fire brigade, reported to be friendly with the police. The door is still open, the old stock collar is coming back, not forgetting the time you laughed at elders, chart houses, duck white pants, and the way you said, the whole township can see his hairy legs, by stealth of a curess. Cursor Albuntress abaft his nape she hung, when his kettle became a harsh scoldus. Our thirst diets set their lympha and fire. His year letter concocted by master hands of essays, his hallmark imposed by the standard of wrought palate, a pair of pectorals and a triple screen to get a wind up, lights his pipe with a rose and tree, and hires a tow horse to haul his shoes, cures slaveries, scurvy, breaks barons' boils, called to sell Polish, and was found later in a bedroom, has his seat of justice, his house of mercy, his copious and his stacks of rye, prospector, he had a rucksack, retrospector, he holds the hope and stake, won the freedom of New York for the minds of Jugo slaves, acts active, peddles in pacifism, and is a gorgon of self-rigidness, pours a laugh's worth of his ill formation over the lamb's worth of salt, half heard the single maiden speech, La Belle spun to her grand mount, and hold a lifetime by his ain phrased, wondering what was it Hebrew set him to able tones, or the quicksilver string of quarter tunes. His troubles may be over, but his doubles have still to come. The lobster pot that crabbed our keel, the garden pet that spoiled our squeezed peas. He stands in a lovely park, sea is not far, import to the towns of XYZ. X, Y, and Z, are easily overreached, is an excrescence to civilized humanity, and but a wart on Europe. Wanna made, sing signs, to sound sense, and yet he wanna get all his flesh, new made mutts, truly plural and plausible, has excessively large rings, and is uncustomarily perfumed. Lusteth ath he listus, the clay Whitpay of Athimes is a prince of the Fingalian, in a hybrid naiad of Hoolies, has a Hodge to worry him, and a French to curry him, and a Brabanson for his beater, and a Fritch at his switch, was waylaid of a Parker, and be shutten by a Buckley, kicks lintels when he's cuppy, and casts Jacob's arrowroots, dime after dime to poor wastrays on the parish, reads the charms of H.C. Henderson, all the weeks of his Evelyn, and the crimes of Ivan the Terrible, every strong day morn, soaps you soft to your face, and slaps himself when he's badened, owns the bulgiest bung barrel that ever was tip-tapped in the privace of the Mullingar Inn, was bum with the neuro silver tongue in his mouth, and went round the coast of iron with his lift hand to the scene, raised but 2 fingers, and yet sweltered with day, for whom it is easier to found a sea in Eblenar than for I or you to find a double tie in Dampster Damp, to live with whom is a life mare, and to know whom a liberal education was dipped in holy olives, and cries made in St. O'Toole's. He is cricket on the earth, but annoys the life out of the predicants, still turns the duck's ear of Darius to the now thoroughly infuriated one of the good, made man with the juts that jerk and minted money, mong many. Likes a 6-a-cup pudding when he's come home, sweet home, has come through all the eras of live's adventure, from moonshine and champagne down to clouts and pottled porter, Woolham the fast, Hanwag the altar, charged the sack end, Richard the fjord, if a mandrake shrieked his to Coventures at last surviving his birth, the Wybe duck will wail bitterly over the rotter's resurrection, lose his weight in the moonlight, but gird by the sundown with one touch of nature, set a veiled world a grin, and went with a sheet of tissue paper of the option of 3 jails. Who could see at one blick a sawman taken with a lance, hunters pursuing a doe, a swallow ship in full sail, a white robe lifting a host, faced flappery like old King Canute, and turning his back like Cincinnatus, is a far and more far, and a whore father naked bucker in villas as old as new, squats a squat, and quacks a quaint, when it's flagging a town and Odden's haven, blows whiskery round his summit, but states stout upon his footles, stutters 4 he falls, and goes mad entirely when he's waked, is Tim to the pearly mum, and Tom to the morning light, and an he had the best bun-baked bricks in bold Babylon for his pitching plays, he'd be lost for the want of his one rublint wall.